Picture this: a Friday night, the city buzzing, notifications lighting up phones, people rushing to prove that they belong somewhere. But there's one man who doesn't join the rush. He turns down the party invite. He leaves messages unopened. He doesn't post a carefully staged dinner photo. And when his phone dies, he doesn't panic, he exhales. Most people would call him strange. Some might think he's antisocial, or even broken. After all, we've been taught that being alone means being incomplete. Society has trained us to believe that solitude is a problem to be fixed. But maybe that's the lie. This man isn't running from people. He isn't hiding from life. He's making a choice, a radical one in today's hyper-connected world. While the rest of us fill every quiet second with noise, he chooses silence. While we scroll endlessly to prove we're happy, he steps back and asks a deeper question. What does happiness even mean? And here's the twist that unsettles so many. He isn't lonely. In fact, he's thriving in ways most people can't even imagine. Because while the world is addicted to distraction, he's discovering clarity. While others chase attention, he's building strength. While most are terrified of what silence might reveal, he's found power in facing it. So let me ask you this. What if being alone is not a weakness, but the purest form of freedom? What if solitude isn't emptiness, but the space where true strength begins? Think about the world we live in. The moment most people open their eyes in the morning, the first thing they do isn't breathe deeply or sit in stillness. It's reach for a phone. Before their feet even touch the ground, they're checking what everyone else is doing, thinking, and feeling. From that instant, the day becomes a blur of noise. Commutes filled with podcasts or playlists so we don't feel the weight of silence. Background chatter at work. Constant messages buzzing through group chats. Even in the few quiet moments we're given, we scramble to fill them with another video, another scroll, another endless stream of someone else's voice. We've been conditioned to believe that silence is uncomfortable, even dangerous. That if we're not connected, we're missing something. That being alone, even for a moment, means we're falling behind. So we drown ourselves in constant stimulation, never stopping long enough to hear the one voice that actually matters, our own. But here's the uncomfortable question. What happens when all that noise is stripped away? What's left when we no longer have the validation of likes, the comfort of company, the distractions we lean on every day? For many, the answer is terrifying. Because in that quiet, they meet someone they've been avoiding for years, themselves. And yet, the man who embraces solitude doesn't run from this encounter. He steps into it with open eyes. He isn't afraid of the silence. He doesn't panic when the noise fades. Instead, he discovers what most people spend their whole lives chasing: clarity, peace, and the raw, unfiltered truth of who he really is. Most people spend their lives running from silence. But the man who chooses solitude makes a decision that looks small on the surface, and yet it changes everything. He looks at the endless stream of distractions, the noise, the demands to fit in, and he simply says, no, not out of anger, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. He sees the game for what it is, a script written by advertisers, influencers, and people who profit from keeping us restless. A script that tells us how to look, how to act, what to chase, even who to be. And instead of blindly following, he steps off the stage. Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher who understood the power of solitude long before Instagram or TikTok existed, put it bluntly: a man can be himself only so long as he is alone. Think about that. How often are we truly ourselves when we're surrounded by others? How often are we acting, performing, adjusting, hiding pieces of who we are just to be accepted? The man who embraces solitude refuses to play that role. He chooses not to perform. He chooses not to seek permission. He strips away the noise and sits with what's real, even when it's uncomfortable. And in doing so, he discovers a power that most people never touch: the power of being whole without the crowd, of being enough without applause. To the outside world, it looks strange. It looks rebellious. But to him, it feels natural. Because the moment you stop chasing everyone else's approval, you finally start living on your own terms. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Have you ever wondered why being alone carries such a heavy stigma? Why every movie, every song, every advertisement insists that happiness is only real when it's shared with a crowd? Why the word loner is treated like an insult? It's not by accident. Society fears the man who is comfortable in his own company. Because the moment you no longer need external validation, you can't be controlled. You stop being a predictable consumer. You stop buying products to fill emotional voids. You stop chasing status symbols to prove your worth. The system thrives on your insecurity, on keeping you restless, comparing, endlessly chasing the next fix of approval. But the man who chooses solitude, he steps outside of that cycle. He doesn't need the crowd to tell him who he is. He doesn't need applause to feel successful. He doesn't need permission to live in peace. And that makes him dangerous. Not dangerous in the sense of harm, but dangerous to the illusion we've all been sold. Because he proves something the system doesn't want you to know, that happiness, confidence, and freedom are possible without buying into their game. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, knew this almost 2,000 years ago when he wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." The man who embraces solitude has found that retreat, and it makes him unshakable. While the rest of the world scrambles for attention, terrified of being forgotten, he sits in his quiet corner, untouchable. And that quiet confidence, more than anything, is what society cannot explain, cannot sell, and cannot control. Silence. It's the one thing most people can't handle. The moment the music stops, the call ends, the notifications go quiet, panic sets in. Because in that silence, there's no distraction left. No noise to drown out the questions we don't want to face. And suddenly, we come face to face with the one person we've been avoiding all along, ourselves. That's why solitude terrifies people. We've built entire lives on performance, on being who we think we should be, on hiding the parts of ourselves we don't want others to see. But when you strip away the noise, all that's left is the raw, unfiltered truth. And for most, that truth feels heavier than any horror movie could ever be. But the man who embraces solitude doesn't run from that weight. He doesn't reach for distraction when the silence gets uncomfortable. He sits in it. He listens. He learns. And in that stillness, he discovers something powerful, that the parts of himself he once feared are not enemies, but teachers. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the hidden, repressed, or denied parts of our personality. Most people bury their shadow, projecting it onto others, pretending it doesn't exist. But the man who loves solitude has the courage to face it head-on, to make peace with his flaws, his contradictions, his imperfections. And in doing so, he becomes whole. While others are fragmented, part of them real, part of them fake, part of them desperate for approval, he is integrated. He is real. He is free. Most people spend their days obsessing over how to get more recognition, how to earn more money, how to fit in, how to avoid being left behind. But here's the trap. In chasing the how, they never stop to ask the deeper question, the why. Friedrich Nietzsche said it best. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Without a why, life becomes an endless treadmill, busy, noisy, but ultimately empty. And that's exactly where society wants us, too distracted by the details to ever notice the bigger picture. But solitude changes that. When the noise fades, when the distractions are stripped away, the man who chooses solitude is left alone with the hardest, most important question of all: what truly matters to me? Not what his parents expect, not what society praises, not what earns him applause or validation, but what matters at the core of his being. And when he answers that question, when he finds his why, something extraordinary happens. The world can no longer control him. The opinions of others lose their grip. The ups and downs of external approval become background noise. Because once you know your why, the how takes care of itself. Obstacles shrink. Criticism fades. Challenges become fuel. This is why solitude is so powerful. It forces clarity. And clarity is freedom. The man who knows his why doesn't need a crowd to tell him where to go. He is already walking his own path, steady and unshakable. Most people assume that the man who spends time alone is doing nothing. They see him sitting in silence and think he's wasting his life. But that's the illusion. Because while others are busy consuming, he is quietly creating. In solitude, he builds. He builds mental strength, training his mind to focus deeply while the rest of the world shatters its attention on endless notifications. He builds emotional resilience, learning how to stay steady while others ride the roller coaster of external validation. He builds authentic relationships, not hundreds of shallow connections, but a few deep ones with people who know the real him, not the mask he shows the crowd. And most importantly, he builds skills. Not the kind of surface-level tricks meant to impress strangers online, but real, lasting abilities born from deep practice and discipline. He doesn't broadcast his progress. He doesn't post updates for applause. He simply works, steadily, consistently, in silence. And here's the paradox. When the world finally sees what he has created, whether in his craft, his character, or his quiet confidence, they are stunned. They wonder where it came from, how he became so solid, so capable, so strong. The answer is simple. While others were performing, he was practicing. While they sought attention, he sought mastery. This is the secret most people miss. Greatness is not built in the spotlight. It's built in the quiet, away from the noise, where no one is watching. Here's the truth most people never realize. Freedom isn't about having more. It's about needing less. Think about how most of us live. We feel restless if the Wi-Fi cuts out. We feel insecure if we don't get enough likes. We feel empty if the weekend isn't filled with plans. We've been trained to constantly need entertainment, attention, validation, distraction. Without it, we fall apart. But the man who loves solitude, he's discovered something different. He doesn't need constant entertainment because he's learned to enjoy the simple things, a walk, a thought, a moment of stillness. He doesn't need the approval of others because he's learned to validate himself. He doesn't need to escape from his thoughts because he's made peace with them. This is real freedom, not the illusion of freedom where we choose between endless distractions, but the deeper kind, where distractions aren't necessary at all. Most of us are renting our happiness, borrowing it from social approval, leasing it from relationships, depending on external circumstances that could vanish tomorrow. But the man who chooses solitude, he owns his happiness, he owns his peace, and that ownership makes him untouchable. While others are trapped in cycles of craving and dependency, he walks through life light, free, unburdened. And that, more than anything, is why solitude is not weakness. It's strength in its purest form. Now here's the paradox that confuses everyone. The man who needs relationships the least often ends up with the best ones. Why? Because he's not entering them from a place of emptiness. He's not searching for someone to complete him or begging for validation to feel worthy. He isn't performing, trying to hold people's attention with masks and half-truths. He shows up whole, real, and complete. And when you bring your full self into a relationship, not fragments, not performances, that relationship becomes something rare. He's not antisocial. He's not against connection. What he rejects is fake connection, the shallow exchanges, the endless small talk, the fragile bonds that crumble when validation runs out. Instead, he chooses quality over quantity. One deep, authentic bond matters more to him than 100 empty interactions. And here's what makes him magnetic. When he spends time with someone, they know it's by choice, not by need. When he cares, they know it's real. When he commits, they know it's solid. Because he doesn't need people to fill a void, he chooses them because he values them. This is why his relationships are stronger, deeper, more meaningful. He doesn't drain others with neediness. He doesn't chase them to prove his worth. He brings peace, confidence, and authenticity to the table. And people feel that difference instantly. So while the world sees him as a loner, the truth is that his connections are richer than most. Because he's not afraid to stand alone, he's free to love without fear, without games, without chains. True leadership doesn't come from titles, boardrooms, or loud voices. It comes from self-mastery. And solitude is where that mastery is forged. Think about the great spiritual teachers, Buddha under the tree, Jesus in the desert, Muhammad in the cave. Each one found truth not in the crowd, but in the silence. Because clarity, strength, and vision are born when the noise fades. The man who embraces solitude carries that same power. He knows his strengths, his weaknesses, his fears, and his motives. That self-knowledge makes him steady, unshakable, the kind of person others naturally follow, not because he demands it, but because his calm confidence is magnetic. Even physically, solitude changes him. With less stress, his body relaxes. His energy returns. He sleeps deeper, thinks clearer, and moves through the world with a grounded presence that people notice immediately. This is the quiet power of solitude. It doesn't just shape the mind. It forges the kind of person who can lead, inspire, and guide, without ever needing to shout. At the heart of it all lies one truth. You don't need anyone's permission to be happy. You don't need their approval to live the life that feels right to you. You don't need their validation to know your worth. The man who embraces solitude has uncovered the greatest secret of all: freedom. Not the shallow version of freedom sold to us through endless choices and distractions, but the real kind. The kind that can't be bought, can't be taken away, and doesn't depend on anyone else. He isn't surviving, he's thriving. Thriving because he's broken the chains that hold most of us captive. The chains of insecurity, the chains of comparison, the chains of needing constant reassurance from the outside world. He's not running from life, he's living it on his own terms. And here's the challenge for us. What if the key to everything we've been searching for isn't out there, but in here? What if the power we've been chasing in the crowd has been waiting in the silence all along? The man who loves being alone is showing us a way forward. A way to peace, a way to strength, a way to freedom. So the next time you feel that pull toward distraction, ask yourself, what am I really running from? Because maybe, just maybe, the life you're searching for begins the moment you stop running from yourself. If this message spoke to you, if it put words to a feeling you've carried but never expressed, then you know what to do. Like this video, share it, and subscribe, because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more people brave enough to find power in silence.